The clock is ticking, a government shutdown looms, and the pressure is mounting in Washington, D.C. In just days, Congress faces a critical decision. Will they fund the government, or will the country descend into chaos once more? It's a decision that could shake the very foundation of the U.S. government. As lawmakers scramble to pass a $174 billion spending package, the stakes couldn't be higher. But there's a catch. The Department of Homeland Security, DHS, a powerful agency embroiled in controversy, remains the biggest stumbling block. The Senate has just passed a crucial minibus package, but this victory comes with a catch. The real battle is yet to come. How will Congress navigate the chasm between the two parties over DHS funding? And will the American people pay the price? Stay with me, because what happens next could change everything. For months, Congress has been working to pass critical funding bills, but every step forward has been met with resistance. The latest move, passing a $174 billion spending package, brings lawmakers closer to averting a shutdown. But we're far from the finish line. While the Senate has made progress, a host of unresolved issues still hang in the balance. At the center of it all is the Department of Homeland Security, DHS. The funding process is complicated by strong disagreements over the future of ICE and the actions of DHS in places like Minnesota and Colorado. These political battles are no longer just about numbers on a page. They're about power, values, and the direction of the country. Both sides know that another shutdown, like the one that paralyzed the government for 43 days last fall, is something nobody wants. But with the January 30th deadline rapidly approaching, the question remains, can Congress avoid a crisis, or will history repeat itself? To understand the stakes, we must first look at the history of government shutdowns. The last major shutdown in 2018-2019 lasted an unprecedented 43 days, leaving federal workers without pay and critical services stalled. It was a painful lesson in the dysfunction of American politics, one that neither party wants to repeat. Yet as the clock runs down, the same issues seem to be resurfacing. This pattern isn't new. Time and again, we've seen Congress struggle to balance competing priorities: security concerns, government services, and political pressure. The battle over DHS funding, however, is particularly intense. The agency's actions, particularly with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, have ignited a firestorm of political debate. Democrats, furious over the agency's recent moves, have made clear that they will not support any funding package that gives ICE a free pass. But Republicans, led by figures like Senate Majority Leader John Thune, are pushing for an agreement that avoids a shutdown, even if it means compromising on some key issues. The battle over DHS funding reached a boiling point when news broke of a fatal shooting involving an ICE agent. This tragic event has sparked outrage, particularly among Democrats who have long been critical of the agency's actions. For them, this was the moment that underscored the need for restrictions on DHS funding, especially concerning ICE. This wasn't just another political dispute, it was a moral issue. The public outcry was immediate, with lawmakers demanding accountability and changes to the way ICE operates. In response, Republicans have offered a counter-proposal, but it's clear that the gulf between the two sides is wide. Senate Majority Leader John Thune, a key figure in the negotiations, emphasized the urgency of reaching the deal, but he also acknowledged that the disagreements over DHS are the toughest hurdle. As the clock ticks down to the January 30th deadline, the situation has escalated from a policy disagreement to a full-blown crisis. The question now isn't just whether a shutdown will be avoided, it's whether the political divisions in Washington can be bridged before the government is forced to shut down again. Behind the scenes, the machinery of government is far more complex than it may seem. The funding process isn't just about passing bills, it's about negotiating power, priorities, and policy. The minibus package passed by the Senate was just one part of this intricate web. The real challenges lie in the deeper, often unseen mechanisms at play. the power struggles, the backroom deals, and the delicate balance between political ideologies. At the heart of the current crisis is the Department of Homeland Security, an agency that touches on some of the most divisive issues in American politics. But it's not just about ICE or border security. DHS funding is also tied to military spending, national security, and the future of America's immigration system. Every provision in the funding bills is a reflection of competing visions for the country. In Washington, this isn't just a game of passing legislation, it's about asserting control over the future. Democrats and Republicans alike are trying to shape the direction of the country through these funding decisions. The question is, can they overcome the political gridlock and find common ground before the government shuts down once again? As the negotiations over DHS funding continue, another crisis is unfolding on the political stage. This time, it's the looming threat of a short-term funding extension or continuing resolution. While a CR can temporarily keep the government running, it is hardly a long-term solution. It's a band-aid, not a cure. Lawmakers from both sides of the aisle are aware that relying on a CR would only delay the inevitable, but they're running out of options. The tensions are reaching a breaking point. Senate Homeland Security Appropriations Chair Katie Britt has expressed frustration over the lack of a clear path forward, citing the importance of passing an actual bill rather than kicking the can down the road. On the other side, Democrats are adamant that any funding bill must come with constraints on DHS actions, particularly in regard to ICE. The back and forth is intensifying, and with each passing day, the window to reach a deal grows smaller. The stakes are higher than ever. A CR might buy some time, but it won't solve the fundamental issues at play. The question remains, can Congress find a lasting solution, or will they be forced to punt yet again? At the heart of this political standoff are the American people, citizens who rely on government services and federal programs to survive. For them, the shutdown isn't just an abstract concept, it's a real, painful reality. Federal workers have already faced the uncertainty of unpaid leave, long hours, and the stress of not knowing when their next paycheck will arrive. A shutdown would bring all of that back and more. For many, the uncertainty of the government's future means more than just missed paychecks. It's about the disruption of services that affect everyday life. Public safety, healthcare programs, even veterans' benefits. A prolonged shutdown would hurt families, communities, and the most vulnerable citizens in the country. This isn't just a political issue, it's a human one. The question is, will lawmakers act before the consequences of their inaction become too severe? The clock is ticking, and with each passing day, the pain will only grow for those who depend on government services. The time to act is now, but will they rise to the occasion? The effects of a government shutdown are not confined to the borders of the United States. On the global stage, the uncertainty created by a shutdown sends ripples across financial markets, foreign relations, and security alliances. U.S. foreign aid, trade agreements, and diplomatic missions all depend on federal funding. A shutdown would throw all of that into jeopardy, undermining America's position on the world stage. International partners are watching closely, unsure whether the U.S. government will remain stable or if it will crumble under the weight of its internal conflicts. For instance, in Europe and Asia, critical discussions about trade deals and military cooperation with the U.S. could be put on hold. Worse still, adversaries may see this as an opportunity to exploit the nation's vulnerabilities. In a world that is more interconnected than ever before, the shutdown isn't just a domestic problem, it's a global one. The question is, can America's political leaders pull the country back from the brink before their actions have irreversible consequences abroad? As we stand at this crossroads, three potential futures await the United States, depending on how Congress handles this crisis. The best scenario: a bipartisan deal is struck and the government is funded without a shutdown. Congress agrees to a reasonable compromise on DHS funding, including necessary restrictions on ICE while ensuring national security. This deal not only prevents a shutdown, but also restores trust in the government's ability to govern effectively. The country moves forward with renewed stability. The middle ground. Congress opts for a short-term funding extension, buying some time to negotiate. The shutdown is averted, but the underlying issues remain unresolved. The political gridlock persists, leaving the government in a perpetual state of uncertainty. While the immediate crisis is avoided, the long-term consequences of failed leadership linger. The worst scenario. The negotiations break down, and Congress fails to pass the necessary funding bills. A government shutdown ensues, disrupting services, hurting the economy, and eroding public confidence in the political system. The country becomes further divided, and the impact on federal workers and vulnerable citizens is devastating. This scenario would not only deepen the political crisis, but could also spark a series of global repercussions. The path forward is uncertain, but the future of the country hinges on the decisions made today. As the clock ticks down and the battle for funding intensifies, the choices made by Congress will echo far beyond the halls of Washington. This isn't just about numbers or political games, it's about the future of the country. A government shutdown would be a failure of leadership, a breakdown of the very system that millions of Americans rely on every day. But even more than that, it would be a failure of democracy itself. The time to act is now. Lawmakers must find common ground, set aside partisan differences, and prioritize the well-being of the people over political posturing. The choices they make in these final days will define not only the immediate future, but the legacy they leave for generations to come. The question is, will they rise to the challenge, or will they let history repeat itself? It's up to us, as citizens, to hold them accountable and demand the change we need. The government's future is uncertain, but one thing is clear: the consequences of inaction are too great to ignore.